Hello and welcome to another episode of MIA Podcast, where we explore this topic of will Australian manufacturing ever return to the glory days of the 60s? And here to help us answer that question and keep us safe, so we'll find out more about that in a second, is Rob McDonald from GSD Safety. Welcome, Rob.
Hey, John. Thanks for that. Great to be here and great to have a chat to all of your listeners and viewers.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, we're talking about safety, but from the angle of not just, hey, you've got a ladder, you got to get the ladder safe. It goes way deeper than that. And we're looking at how container stress on container shipping routes around the world can impact the safety of your manufacturing plants. So should be an interesting conversation today.
Absolutely. So yeah, just leading into that a little bit, where we often talk about safety as a pillar of what you've got to do. So you've got obligations under the WHS Act, and we all know that, and we all know that you have to have safety. But what does safety really mean, and how broad is safety? That's what people don't always understand. So when you think about safety in shipping containers, and we've all gone through the process in manufacturing around the delays in shipping containers not available, all the pressures around that. So what happens is that pushes back onto the manufacturing side. And when you have those pressures, then you either have stock piling up in your warehouse, or you have pressures on time frames, and then you've got to manufacture things just in time to get onto containers. What that does is it puts pressure back into your business. That is safety. So safety in a nutshell isn't just having policies and procedures and having a look at what you need to do on the floor level. It's also looking at external pressures. And that's where we can actually help you look at what is going to happen in the future by looking at your trends and what's happening in the actual environment. And that's where safety should go. It's not just about looking after the housekeeping and are you running out of toilet paper in the toilet?
Cool. All right. I like it. So hopefully you're engaged, viewers and listeners. Now, Rob, do you want to give a bit of a background around GSD Safety, a bit how you got started and how you can help, how you help people in the industry?
Great. Yeah. So how I got started, basically, I've been in the manufacturing circle for about 20 years. Coles, BOC, and then food manufacturing with Freedom Foods or Numi. So being in that background for a fair period of time, I took a redundancy and then thought, I'll do this for myself instead of working for a man again or working for a company again. So I'm branching out, and the process that GSD Safety does is we look after your obligations under the WHS Act. So we really do the process of reducing cost with better safety. And that's literally what we do, is reducing costs of people, whereby we're reducing injuries and accidents. And that's a cost. Reducing business cost, whereby you have damages, incidents, accidents, overtime, all the rest of it from the people aspect. That's a business cost of safety from safety practices. We also align the team and the business to the WHS Act. The Act is written so that it's actually designed to look after people. It's designed to look after your business, and it's also designed to look after your reputation, because the Act is written in a way that they want businesses to succeed. So I follow that ideology of protecting people, business, and reputation. So I also reduce the costs in reputation by, if you have an injury and accident that actually goes to a regulator, then basically you're going to be in a position that you may have to go to court, or you may be in the paper. And then that's your reputation damage. I can resolve that before it happens with proactive instead of reactive results. So that's sort of what we do.
I love it. It sort of reminds me of my experience when I finished Year 12 high school. I worked in the factory that my dad was a CFO at, and I was having minor injuries, a cut here and a nick there, but essentially that, it's only tiny what happened to me, but at the end of the day, that was still, I had to go then on light duties because I, put a cut on my finger. I couldn't be putting blood all over the product that we were putting out, things like that. But, even something minor like that, it's a starting point.
And you raise a really good point where near misses and hazards under the WHS Act is actually considered the same as if it actually happened. So when you look at these little nicks and cuts and bits of housekeeping processes, they can all add up. And when they add up, that can be a potential of somebody actually being more seriously hurt. And they're the triggers. So near misses are just as important to register and act on, because they're a free hit, basically. So when you talk about a cut that you've got, and it's a very minor cut, the next person, there is a fine line between a near miss or a minor injury and a severe injury or death. It's a very fine line. You can't tell the difference between it, because it's circumstantial of what's going to happen. So that's where we look at all reporting incidents, and that's really important to understand and implement in your business, that you actually review all of those. What it also does is it increases your culture around safety, but it also says to the guys, we're serious. We want to look after you. We want to make sure that you're going home safe, and there's a business benefit too, because time off, as you said, you've got to go on light duties. Who's covering that shift? Who's doing the job that you normally do? Now you've got another cost, because you've got to replace that person for that period of time. So it just makes good business sense. But what it does also is it says to the guys on the floor in your manufacturing processes, hey guys, we got you, and we want you to be looked after. And what that does is it creates a better business. And a better business model means you get better processes. But the other thing is you get better productivity. If you follow the processes and procedures that you've written, that's always the best way to do a job. If you get injured or there's something that people are making a decision around that actually makes them have to make a change, that takes more time and effort, and then you're away from your center line for that particular equipment that you're working on, which means there's going to be more downtime, which is more cost in your business. So when you do follow the processes and procedures under your safety process or your manufacturing process, you get better actual productivity. So safety makes sense all around.
Yeah, look, I know when we had a coffee a week ago, it's there's a bit of a new world opening up to me. I thought safety was quite simple, but there's obviously a few layers of complexity to it. But layers of complexity in terms of benefits for a business as well. I know typically in the circles I'm in now, so us as a marketing business, we're in a nice, safe building. We're in more of a corporate environment, but there's obviously there's stuff all around us which possibly not safe. If I decided to change a light globe by staying on my chair like right now, I'd probably get told off. But this whole thing of safety standards are there to help a business, and we've talked about things like productivity, stress levels as well. I know when I went just to go to the factory, my mum used to freak out because she had these visions of these. I don't know what my mum thought was in the dad's factory, but there's robots like chopping off arms. I don't know what it was, but my mum used to stress the hell out. But I'm sure there's people in a workplace environment who maybe have had an incident where there's maybe a bit of trepidation to go back into that environment unless there is a culture that supports that, and there's a plan in place to roll out, and there's layers in place as well.
Yeah, and I think that goes for the culture, but that's the alignment of the team and the business together, which I talked about as part of the process that I do in helping businesses. You also picked up another point there too with the process around when you're going into a process where you were talking about, in the beginning when you're a kid going into an environment and all that, it's interesting where doing inductions and introducing people into an environment, that's really important too, because contractors, they're 3 times more likely to be injured than non-contractors because they don't know your business, they don't know your processes, and they're coming in to do a job and going. The other thing that you raised also too is what environments now people really need to be considering, because the Act doesn't say the size of the business. It doesn't say what you do. It just says you have an obligation to do it. And so part of that process also is, you mentioned, in a corporate environment or even your office environment, you still have those obligations. So I often go into a corporate setting and people go, no, we're all good. We don't need safety. But it's like, hang on. What about your contractor management? Oh, we don't have contractors. We're in a corporate situation. It's like, who's changing your light globes? Who's actually doing the testing of the smoke alarms? Who's doing your test and tag of your computers, your laptops? And people go, oh, you don't have to do that. And it's like, yeah, you do. Under the Act, you do. It's test and tag is part of the process. And there was just recently down in Canberra, there was a electrocution of somebody that actually went to go and move their laptop, and the company got prosecuted because they didn't do test and tagging of the laptop, and they got electrocuted because there was a substandard cord. Because any electrical device that's getting moved regularly, you need a test and tag. You can do a risk assessment to say, I don't want to do test and tag of areas that are low risk, and you can have that risk assessment done and you don't have to do it. So there's some savings and cost and time and all the rest of it, and managing that process. But you have to do the risk assessment, and you have to have it agreed to that your business is not going to do that process and people understand it, but you don't move that equipment anymore. So there's a whole heap of things that we can do in an office environment. The other thing that's really coming into play at the moment, you might have heard about, is the sexual harassment and domestic violence. That's just going through a lot of jurisdictions now. So a lot of states have really jumped on board with that. They're really taking that on board, and the fines on that are now massive. So it can be the old days. There was the manufacturing was a bloke weld. Now it's not. And so there's more interaction of, young females coming into your manufacturing processes. And I'm not saying that, these things happen regularly, but it still happens where there is sexual harassment happening. And it doesn't always have to be male-female situations. It can be male-male. Unfortunately, it gets swept under the carpet. People hold on to things and they don't voice it until it becomes to the point of, I'm really in trouble with this emotionally, and this is why the Act is coming into play. And corporates aren't safe either from saying, oh, we're okay, we don't have this happening. There was a case recently in the paper where a large corporate, I won't say their name, a very large corporate that is in this game of safety and audit, and they had a suicide because of sexual harassment. So wow. It is one of those areas that's getting more and more focus by the regulators and the courts.
Yeah, so that comes under the topic of safety, is it?
It's all under the WHS Act, and it's also under your HR process. HR. Yeah. But it's funny how there's a crossover between HR, safety, and quality. Yeah, quality and safety go very hand in hand, but HR and safety go very hand in hand. And often you'll find your safety team is under the HR team, under the HR director or somebody in that line, potentially, or safety has a director that's individually at that level, depending on the size of the company and how your structure is.
Yep.
Yeah. But safety is one of those areas that is across all departments. Yeah. It actually touches everything, financial, everything, because it actually is still a risk.
Yeah. Okay. That's good knowledge. Now, before we have all of the listeners running scared going, oh my goodness, I've got to completely transform my business. Something we discussed last week was this whole concept of, correct me if I'm wrong here, but something on the lines of, if an incident occurs, but you've got plans in place to roll out solutions, maybe the solution's not fully implemented yet, but an incident happens, there is you might get a slap on the wrist essentially, but essentially if you can show proof that you're putting procedures in place, then you're going to come out better than if you just went, we're going to forget it, we're going to ignore it.
Yeah, so there's a little clause in the WHS Act that's really handy. It's called continuous improvement, or what is reasonably practicable to actually measure and manage and do corrective actions. So if you're having a slight injury And there's two parts to this. So if you're having a slight injury and there's a potential for no more than what there is there, it's not reasonably practical to go and do $1 million guarding or $1 million process on a minor incident that will only ever be a minor incident. However, you need to do a risk assessment to say it'll only ever be a minor incident, but you don't have to go and spend $1 million on everything. So there's a really good little catchphrase there of what is reasonably practicable, and that's a legal term, and it's written in the Act. The other part of that also,
lawyers as to what's reasonably practical or not.
yeah, and it's all around risk assessment.
Yeah.
So if you can show your risk, now risk assessments can be complicated, and I've got a very simple template that I can help people with, but that process really is around consultation and communication, and reviewing of those risks in consultation will actually get a better result, and understanding what those risks are and how to control those risks. And the other part to that process also of the minor incidents and accidents is if you're actually looking at that incident and there is a greater potential for that to happen, what is it that you're going to be doing as a continuous improvement program? So you might have had an incident and a regulator comes on site. Take that for an example, which is, it's extreme, but it happens. However, if you have things in place and you actually show your due diligence of, I've inducted these people, I've trained them, we actually have communication, we actually do the risk assessments, we do all these processes which actually are part of the Act. And if anyone needs help, I've got a process that's called 20 Elements of Safety, a practical guidance on safety, and it breaks down the Act into a very clear process. And if you've got those steps in place on that 20 Elements of Safety, then you'll actually have the regulators come on board and go, look, it's happened, but it could have been worse, but we're actually not going to go the whole hog on you and really enforce stuff because you have things in place. And it's a continuous improvement program. So you can't be 100% all the time, and you can't identify every single thing. We have human element, but the Act actually says, are you on a continuous improvement program? And that's where if you have things in place, like I said, your induction, your training, your risk assessments, your communication, all those bits and pieces, you will actually be on a good path to reducing your liability in an injury or an accident situation. So it's really good to work with somebody that actually knows this stuff to get you on that journey and then work with you, because then your liability is a lot lower in the event of an incident or an accident.
Yeah. Great advice. And that's why we have businesses like yourself to consult with, I think, because I guess there is a lot of unknowns. Now, just to give some of our listeners,
well, sorry to jump in on that one. A lot of unknowns, but the Act is changing very quickly too.
Yeah.
So some of you may already know that in New South Wales, if you have a major incident, even if it's not a death, but you actually have something that has a potential for death, in New South Wales, the fines for that level, Category 1 injury and accident, is actually $3.7 million. So how many businesses can recover from that? That is actually getting reviewed at the moment, and it's actually passing Parliament right now that it's actually going to $18 million. So you need to do things to make sure you're not in that space, because Category 1s are coming at a fast rate of, we don't want this. In March the 2nd, there was 18 deaths in Australia.
Wow.
And that's too many. Yeah. One's too many. Even Category 2s, I don't have the stats on that right now, but Category 2s is about 6 or 8 times more than you do of Category 1s, but we don't hear about them.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's scary stats out there.
Yeah,
and we don't hear about it, and we don't hear about the changes in the Act, and we don't hear about what the regulators are doing. And that's where somebody like myself can come in and say, well, these are the things that are actually happening, because I get notifications.
At the end of the day, like I'm making an assumption here, but I would say most of our listeners who are running manufacturing businesses, they would like to have their workers come to work, do their work, and go home to their families.
That's how you make profit. That's how you keep everyone happy.
Yeah, exactly. And what range of not safe to like overtly safe have you seen in your experience?
Oh wow. That's a really open-ended question, isn't it?
Without naming names, obviously.
No. I wasn't going there. I was just thinking, like, what is the range? I've walked into places and like, oh my goodness, it can start at the front door, and you just can tell a business their commitment to safety when you look at the whole welcome piece of a business. And I've walked into some places and there's very little room to move, and forklifts are running around. It's noisy. A really good indicator for me is, are there people doing a lot of yelling and screaming on the floor, or is it calm, quiet? People are going about their business. They're still having fun. They're still doing things and they're still chatting, but it's not yelling, screaming, tooting horns unnecessarily on forklifts. There's people yelling over equipment. There's all that sort of thing happening. And then housekeeping is a major piece. And we all talk about housekeeping, but it's one of those things, if you have too much congestion, you're going to have injuries and accidents because you can't move and you're restricted in your ability to do things correctly. But the other thing is, how do you actually follow your obligations under an emergency situation when you've got too much stuff blocking entries and exits and stuff, and walkways, pathways and stuff? You turn the lights out in a factory, fill it with a bit of smoke or no smoke and lights out. How do you find your way around? And this is the sort of stuff you've got to look at and go, are we actually safe in an emergency situation? And that's where you can go around and look at your business and go, oh, I need to make some change here. I need to get engagement. I need to spend a bit of money sometimes to get things looking a little bit more safe. Unfortunately, safety is one of those costs. However, if you don't do it, safety will be a very large cost that you may not recover from.
Mm.
And to go to your point of really good business, I've just put on LinkedIn last night on my profile, whereby I did a video of a warehouse, and really clean, really quiet, but there was a whole heap of things that actually aren't correct that you could improve on. And that was a very large organization with a very big operation. I've walked into some really big operations and they've gone, we want to put some employment people in here. We want to do all sorts of things with growing. And I'm talking a very large organization in Australia that's very well known, household name. I walked in and I did a risk assessment, and there was a whole heap of reds. Red on a risk assessment doesn't necessarily mean bad, but what it does say is, are you in control of those risks? And then when you have a look at the traffic management plan, along with your risk assessment, it's like, oh my goodness, you've got a few things to do. You've actually improved your warehouse area before I walked in, but there's still areas of improvement that you could look at. So you never sit on your laurels. You never go, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
So I think the range from, oh my goodness, I walk in the door and go, oh, far out, there's a lot of work we can do here, to, okay, we're still on the continuous improvement journey. Yeah. Even if you think you're there, don't think you're there.
A bit like cybersecurity, marketing, pretty much everything in business. There's no like, we're done.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah, it's the nature of business, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, it's got to be in your budget. Safety's got to be in your budget, and resourcing. And it's one of the things we talked about when we caught up for a coffee. Resourcing doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a whole big team. Resourcing might mean you have somebody come in and assist you, but it's actually understanding what's going on in your business and where your obligations lie, and meeting those obligations. So it needs to be in your budget. Otherwise, the regulators, if you do have an incident, they won't look favourably.
Good one to know. No fudging the books. So let's talk about Australian manufacturing for shift focus for a little bit. So you were involved in manufacturing for a while. This whole show is about looking at where we are now, what the future of manufacturing is as well. Just broadly, where do you see Australian manufacturing right now? We've had a bit of an increase in percentage of GDP over the last couple of years. is this use the term a honeymoon period of, we've had all the pressures of COVID and supply chain shortages. Everyone's looking local, modern manufacturing initiative. Is this sustainable, or is this a honeymoon period?
I think for Australian manufacturing, I think this is an absolutely ideal time to really shine and use the skills that we have in Australia. I think our backyard doesn't get looked at enough, and we do a lot, but we don't actually share that a lot. I'm on a few memberships, and going to a few forums and processes where we share ideas and stuff. And I'm actually hearing that there is an upkick in manufacturing. There is that honeymoon period, as we spoke about, in terms of we've got to get on board though. We've got to make this happen correctly and shine what we do in Australia, because we don't do that very well. Australians have a nature of just getting in and getting done.
Yeah.
And we don't actually celebrate what we do very well. And that process, I think it's going to be a process that's going to take time.
Yep.
But I think there's the opportunities that you look at the government at the moment, where they're trying to get the submarine process here in Australia. They've got it, but there's going to be a whole heap of manufacturing in Australia that's going to assist with that. And there's only one area, agricultural. There's a lot more focus on agriculture at the moment, and then they all need manufacturing processes. You think about the ag gear, it's all big stuff nowadays, and the processes to help them, software, everything else, it's all needed to help the manufacturing, but also the agriculture and other areas with manufacturing in that space. So there's a lot of opportunity in Australia, but we just need to actually showcase it and really highlight what we can do for those industries.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I always come back to the American model. They very proudly beat their chest. I'm still sitting on the fence as to whether Australians should be as overt as Americans. I think we've got our own way of getting our word out there.
Yeah.
But we keep repeating on this podcast and just around manufacturing as well. We're known for quality. We're renowned for our ingenuity. And we've got a whole bunch of resources that we're literally sitting on I think there's a lot of wastage in terms of how things get processed, but there's layers of that coming back to Australia. They're the interesting things that I like to see what's happening with that angle as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things Australia really needs to sort of get on board with is not beating our chest so much, but taking pillars and silos away. And I think that's where manufacturing will really shine, because we sort of do our own thing and look at what we do and just keep doing that. And that model needs to change a little bit for manufacturing, whereby we go across different industries and processes and look at the scope larger. But it's also, we've got some manufacturing over in WA, and then, up in Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, all those big areas of really big manufacturing. But how do we learn from each other? How do we grow? How do we help each other? And that's the key piece that I think Australia needs to work on a little bit better for manufacturing. And then from that, you get better processes, and you get better infrastructure, and you get better networking that will actually help us to grow and showcase. And I think that is a key for Australian manufacturing, is to actually do a lot more networking and help, because nobody knows everything about everything. And then sometimes just getting on a network forum or something along those lines where you share ideas and you improve, because if you can share that idea, others will improve on that idea and share it back again. Or it means that you've got an opportunity to grow your business in another area because you've just shared that. So I think that's where Australia needs to get a bit better.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I think we'll put some links in the show notes as well, because you're a member of I'm just trying to remember the organisation. It's down near Sutherland.
Yeah. So it's a Southern Strength Manufacturing.
Southern Strength Manufacturing. Yeah.
Yeah. I've only just recently become a member of that, but it's a great forum, and they've got great breakfasts where they actually go on with great speakers. So AUKUS was the last we talked about with the submarines and the manufacturing they're going to use in Australia for that. The next one in May, the next breakfast we have, there's other speakers, and I can't quite think on the top of my head, sorry, that are around Australian manufacturing and the opportunities in the government programs and other opportunities for Australian manufacturing. So it's a really good opportunity. There's some really big horsepower in that room when they meet. It's great to see the cross manufacturers working together, and some of the deals that are done, like you'll have electronic guys with steel manufacturing, with all sorts of areas that are all coming together and sharing ideas. But I think that needs to be a bigger pond for idea sharing.
Where would you see that sitting? Would you see manufacturing bodies, universities? Because there's quite a few layers around this government as well. In your mind, what would be a logical? Who would be driving this?
I think the local councils and local government, and a lot of people go, oh, councils, like what are they going to? There's a lot of businesses in councils that need to share. And you get pods of manufacturing areas because of the way cities are designed. So I think councils have a really big play in this, and the forums of membership forums and that. But I think councils and state governments really have a responsibility for this stuff, and I think they need to work on this a lot better, because manufacturing, as you say, the years of the 60s and the early 80s are gone. And we need to get more focus back into Australia on manufacturing. And I think what we can see opportunities here in Australia is what you were saying earlier around the quality and just the processes we have. But we've just got to get a little bit better at that, sharing those ideas through our local governments and our state governments. And then, of course, what the government's doing at the moment with the big deals overseas, that all helps too, because small manufacturers and medium manufacturers can jump on board with that stuff. But it's just getting those opportunities heard and how you can actually find those opportunities. I think that's another key piece. So there's a few websites and a few areas where you can do searches on that, and opportunities to actually share. So there's a few forums that says, okay, if you're looking for these tenders, you go onto this website. If you're looking for this manufacturing circle, you go on this website. So there are some opportunities, and I know I work with a company where they do the R&D tax relief for if you're doing an R&D. So they're a great opportunity for what the government actually has available for people. And that's not always known too. How do you find those incentives that you can use? How can you find those relieves in your processes to make your cost reduced? And that's what it's all about, is not having to hear of this after the event. It's where do you go to find all this information? How do you find that there's a tax relief? How do you find that there's an opportunity? That's, I think, what Australia needs to get better through local and state government.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I think this is like the third recording we've done in a row where we've said, let's get someone from a government level on the podcast. So if you know someone, send them our way and we'll get them on the podcast. So we want to have someone from the federal level who we can have probably a tougher conversation with. Just that whole thing of like, are they doing the politician thing? They're rolling out initiatives, great, tick a box. Down to, I'm a bit cynical around that, but I know there's a lot more to it than that. But down to that local level as well, where they do tend to be more hands-on. We find. So I think that'd be great to have someone. If you've got someone in your network that can get on the podcast, please send them our way. Because we're actually the format of the show. We're actually going to have a forum as well. So 6 or 7 speakers from different areas of manufacturing, just to essentially sit on a table and have a good solid conversation. So we need a politician on there.
And I think a diverse process around having a politician, but then all the other pillars that you have inside the manufacturing space.
Yep.
So having a politician, but having the conversation around where's the employment process at the moment, having some HR representatives on that panel as well, Safety. I'll always advocate that one. But also other areas of manufacturing struggles as well.
Yeah.
So your transport.
Yeah.
So even if it's manufacturing, government processes around that, but they're also aligned to transport. So there's a whole heap of industries that touch points for the manufacturing. And that's the thing with what people don't always sort of look at manufacturing. They go, okay, you got a factory and you make stuff. But there's a touch point of where do you go in the world? What do you do with that piece of equipment? It goes down line to a warehousing process, and then it's logistics. So how do you get those logistics processes on board? And then it's overseas shipment. There's all the shipping routes that are all getting disrupted because of the costs and rising costs through COVID, but also the shipping lanes are no longer using Australia as a main route point anymore. The containers were a major key point for everybody that were doing stuffing and destuffing container processes to ship overseas. And so, all these areas are touch points for manufacturing. People don't always equate a lot of other parts of manufacturing to pull it all together because there's a lot of touch points, and people will go, okay, we're manufacturing. No, we're logistics and we're transport. Yeah, but when you manufacture something, you've got to poke it out the back of the shed somehow.
Yeah. People don't buy it direct from the factory that often.
Yeah.
My dad he always talks about back when he was directly involved in manufacturing, it was quite common for a rail line to go straight to the factory.
Yeah.
Train pull up, put all the cargo on, and then offer to go to the next factory, essentially, for the larger manufacturers. And that infrastructure is primarily road now.
Yeah.
Which makes it, like you said, there's a, if the roads aren't up to scratch, if the planning hasn't been done properly, that then adds costs to logistics and transport, and it's not just a straightforward get it out of the factory to a warehouse and on, throw it overseas.
Yep.
There's a lot of complexity to it.
And once you're in that supply chain, I'll come back to safety again with the supply chain. You actually are part of that chain. So are you meeting your obligations under the heavy vehicle regulator? So that process of where do you fit in that supply chain? So that's part of your traffic management planning to get trucks on site, but it's also if you allow a truck to leave your site and it's on the road and they run into a family at the next roundabout, then how did you put those controls into place? Did the guy actually show his hours, or did he look sleepy? Did he look like he was on drugs? Did you actually strap everything down correctly? What is your process to ensure that you're meeting the HVR, the heavy vehicle regulator processes, to ensure that truck is safe leaving your site? And how do you make sure that route that you're doing between your sites or to the customer, you're still in the chain and you still have obligations to meet those obligations under the heavy vehicle regulation? So there's a whole heap of areas where people go, okay, it's logistics, I'll put it on a truck. No. You're still part of that chain. You still have obligations. If you don't do your piece of that chain, then you will get looked at very heavily.
There you go. I remember I got my heavy vehicle license through the military back in the day, actually. But I remember we had to do all the civilian qualifications and all that. And there's a lot to it, right? Just not learning how to change gears and turn a corner. There's a lot to it.
There is. I also was truck driving when I was on gold mines. So I did 4 years of surface and underground mining. Then I was also working for BOC, and I was Region South Pacific Manager for all transport. So I'll be in New Zealand one day and then WA the next day with a rollover or a crash or whatever, and doing investigations around that. So I was setting up the risk assessments and processes for BOC. Did that for a year and a bit as the South Pacific Manager, and unfortunately the structure changed in BOC. So after 9.5 years, I was moved on. But others benefit now from that. So my experience, but transport and safety are a major area. If you take out the incidents and accidents in Australia, the death rate, if you take out transport, manufacturing is the next in line of the stats, and then through the COVID period, nursing and healthcare is actually number 3 at the moment in the stats of injuries and accidents because of manual handling and processes around healthcare. But manufacturing has always been up there in injuries and accidents and logistics, and they go hand in hand together. So deaths on the road is still part of responsibility.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Lots of food for thought there. So we've hit the time where we're towards the end of the podcast itself. Rob, you've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of very vast background as well, which adds to your capability as to what your business does. It's not just checking tags. There's a whole lot of strategy side to it as well. How do people get in contact with you and your business?
Yeah, so we'll put some links up, as you mentioned. So gsdsafety.com.au. That's my webpage.
We're not going to spell it out because it's GSD.
Yeah. Getting stuff done. So yeah, basically for me, safety is about getting stuff done. It's not about ticking reports and saying, look, you're stuffed up, do it right. I will get in there and get stuff done with you. I will be there working with the engineers to make sure that you're looking at how we can fix things. And that's what safety really needs to be about, is getting in and actually making change and looking after people. Reports are one thing, and you have to do the reporting, you have to do the documentation. However, it's the next level. It doesn't matter how sexy your reports are. It doesn't save lives. And I learned that many years ago. That reports, everyone loves the reports at the upper echelons of companies, but it doesn't save lives. It doesn't make a difference. So what I do is I get down and get stuff done. So, I'm putting it politely. So I'm also on LinkedIn, but yeah, we'll put some stuff up.
Put them in the show notes as
well. Yeah, so it's actually quite a vast area, and that's why I've got as I said, the 20 elements of safety and a practical safety guide. So I've written an ebook. So if anyone's interested, get in contact with me. On the website, I've got a 1300 number and also a link to the free ebook. I'm certainly happy to work with you around those processes of understanding your obligations under the Act, and the ebook will help you to open up that conversation. It's a bit of a self-help workbook if you want to do it that way, but it is a big area of obligations. So we can certainly look at how we can help.
Yeah, perfect. And we'll put a link in the show notes to that ebook download as well. So Rob, thank you very much for coming on board. Before we close off, your opinion, will Australian manufacturing ever return to the glory days of the 60s?
Oh, I think Australia has changed so dramatically in every area, and I think the globe has changed dramatically in every area. I think people have been highlighted the fact that things aren't going to be the same anymore through the COVID period, and I think it's potentially a good thing because it means there's more opportunity. And I often hear my kids, 17 and 15 now, but I often hear when they're in their 30s, there'll be jobs that we don't even know.
Yeah, and
I think that's where I was talking about trends and understanding where things are heading, looking at those trends and jumping on that. One of the things that I was listening to a little while ago around trends is jumping on the front of the wave. If you do surfing or anything to do with sports, you've got to go that you've got to be a lead, but not too far out in front that you're actually too unicorn-like. But you need to be on that wave in the beginning of it, and then also the other analogy of sport is the follow through. You've got to do that piece, but it's understanding. I don't think we'll ever get to the heady days of heavy manufacturing, the old style of the British way of doing it, big and heavy, and bigger and heavier is better. But I don't think we need to be there either as a world. I think we need to be nimble and fast, but being on that wave, I think is where I would sort of see things to be. But I think there's the opportunities in Australia are massive, and as you pointed out earlier, we've always been innovative. That's a really hard word to say sometimes. But Australia has always looked at ways of doing things differently. And unfortunately, a lot of stuff from Australia goes overseas. So how do we retain in Australia? And how do we showcase that? Celebrate successes. But also, Australians are always been in the forefront of innovation. and design and manufacturing. And you look at a lot of things that happen in Australia, they go overseas because of the funding. I think that's a major piece that needs to happen to keep Australia's manufacturing alive.
Yep. Well, yeah, our population is slowly growing. We've probably added, what, about 10 mil or something since I was at high school. So it's growing. So one of the biggest challenges has always been, that quote, we don't have the population to support it. It's not going to change overnight, but it's getting there.
Well, it's not just the population, it's the size of the country. So if you look at the cost of transport from WA to Queensland, for example, it's just massive, and no other country has that. You look at Europe, it's very small. Even America, because they've got the population, but they've got more centres and they've got more transport opportunities. They're set up a lot better than Australia did.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the rail into some of the back ends of stuff. Queensland and Victoria did that a lot better than New South Wales. And WA is just so vast. So, it's and South Australia, Northern Territory, sorry, I haven't mentioned those, and the areas and size is just so massive. And the opportunities of hubs now, a lot of businesses are moving out of the cities because of the cost of land. So they can put in a bigger operation and bigger sheds, bigger network and all that outside the cities areas. But then there's more stresses on the infrastructure. And I think Australia, it's missed the boat there because the infrastructure wasn't put in originally.
Yeah.
And what has to be redone because it's been let go. And where other countries have that a lot better than we do. So that's a big cost to Australia is that transportation and networking.
100%. So very interesting conversation today. Thank you for that.
Not just safety.
A little bit different. Yeah. So I thought it was just going to be, let's just talk about, how to tick a few boxes, but we've gone far deeper, which is what this podcast is all about. We're all about helping manufacturers and educating, I think, just the general public on where manufacturing is these days. There's a lot of Australians that think manufacturing has switched off. It hasn't. It's still there. So thank you again, Rob, for coming on board. It's been a pleasure to have you on here. Thank you again to all our regular listeners, watchers, however you consume the podcast, and we will see you in another podcast. And thank you again, Rob.
Thank you very much. It'll be great to come back. And if there's any questions, I'm sure they'll come through you, John, or come through the website.
Absolutely.
Great.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.